Hi, I'm Dodie Jackson from the Garden Club of Houston, a Garden Club of America associated club, and I'm here today to talk to you about topiaries. Topiaries have been around for thousands and thousands of years. Man likes to make things bend to his will, and if you're a gardener and a control freak, this is a perfect project for you. I'm going to start by telling you there are many kinds of topiaries. There are wire topiaries, stuffed topiaries, there's standard clip topiaries. Espalier in the Japanese manner is called bonsai, and that's really for professionals, so I'm not going to talk to you about bonsai today. So I'm going to start with a wired topiary. You can use many, many different types of plant material. For this one, I'm going to use prostrate rosemary, and this variety is called Shimmering Stars. And what we're going to do is we're going to take our plant and we're going to break up the roots. And my container already has some rocks for drainage in the bottom. And we're going to plant our rosemary first. And I'm going to put it through the wire frame so the dirt stays intact. And then I'm going to just gently push my frame down. Now, if you have a frame that doesn't have feet or legs on it, you're going to have to use something to stabilize it. And I use these big picks that you can find at any hardware store. I use them in the wintertime to hold down my free sheets, or some people use them as tent spikes for their kids to keep their tents in the ground. And I don't need it on this one because this one has little feet. When you buy a frame, it's really wise to buy one that has feet. Now, I'm going to spread this plant out. This rosemary does very well. This is the prostrate rosemary. The other rosemary that grows stiff, you see them at Christmas time often in the stores. You can do a beautiful clipped rosemary using a different variety. But this variety has a natural bend to it, and so I'm just going to gently twist it around the frame. And then using an orchid clip, and you can buy these online, and you clip the tender part to your frame. And I like to use colored clips because I can see where they are, and it makes it just easier to keep moving the clips around your topiary as it grows. I think women love to do this because we have a history of weaving, and basically we're just weaving this plant onto the frame. We'll turn it. And don't worry if it's not quite perfectly even. It will even itself out as it grows. There was a wasp. We are outside. And as this grows in, and the stems get woodier, because rosemary has very woody stems, it will totally take on this fun shape. Now, people ask me all the time, where do you get all of your frames? I get all of my frames everywhere. I am always looking, every nursery, I ask if they have frames. I go online and look for frames online. The important thing when you do your design is to make sure that your plant material is in scale with your frame. We wouldn't want to put a giant leaf ivy on this tiny little frame. A smaller ivy like duck's foot or itsy bitsy would be a good ivy for this. Now, sometimes you have branches that don't want to cooperate, but that's why we're training them into submission so that they will work. And you have to have a little patience so that this will grow in. And when it does grow in, it's just a beautiful, tiny little tree. Beautiful. So there you have the beginnings of a topiary. And as all the little branches grow, you just keep training them up the wires. So next we're going to do a wire topiary using a vine instead of an herb. And I'm going to cut this pole out of it so it can be free for a few minutes before we start to really make it behave. This is a basic fig ivy. They're kind of a standard in Houston gardens. You see it everywhere. And so it's not difficult to grow. And if you get some age on your topiary, the figs from the fig ivy will hang off your topiary and make it a very, very interesting composition. Now, this fig ivy has been in my greenhouse for a couple of months, untended, and it's grown quite a bit since I purchased it. These are very, very hardy plants for Houston. They often come back after a freeze, and I think they're kind of fun. So what we're going to do with this one is just fig ivy. It doesn't have a specific variety on it. For this topiary, I'm going to plant the plant first, and then I'm going to put my topiary frame over the top of it. There we go. I like to always cut part of the roots out to just kind of stimulate some growth. And break them up a little bit. Though I think this fig ivy doesn't need to be stimulated much. It's a little tall, so it'll take some more dirt out. If you plant your plants low in the pot, they don't need as much water. If they're high, the water will drain out and you'll have to water more often. Okay, now it's time for us to put our frame on. Please notice that this has feet, so it's going to be held into the pot. But because this is so tall, I'm going to use some of my spikes to stabilize it. This is a lot of plant material, but it's going to be really pretty when it's done. Okay. Now please notice I'm putting a lot of plant in the center and leaving some on the side. That's to cover the frame a little bit better. Now, with these tent spikes, I'm going to put some dirt in the pot. Fill in, and put a tent spike, see this? A tent spike right here to help stabilize it. And I'll put one on the other side to stabilize it. And we'll put some more dirt in. And you don't have to pack your dirt down too tight. It'll settle. But we want plenty of air in the soil for the plants. Now, oh my gosh, look at this mess. What are we going to do? We're going to start one at a time. And we're going to gently start wrapping the plant onto this frame. I know it looks like a gigantic mess, but it does have some order to the plant, and we'll pull it down evenly through the different spaces of the frame. Some on the right, some on the left. Usually when you deal with fig ivy, it takes a lot longer than using regular ivies, but I think it gives such a nice look that I think it's worth the extra time. Now the fig ivy can get very woody, which is fine. And I'm going to put another spike in here. Okay. So then we start pulling all of these out and getting to the ends. You want to get to the ends of the vine. And sometimes you have to cut them when they don't cooperate, and that's okay too, because everything's going to grow back. So we're just about finished with a fig ivy topiary vine, and we're going to just put a few more of these orchid clips to keep it in place. You probably should check your topiaries once a week for growth to make sure that the tender new growth is being trained soon. And these little orchid clips help hold it on. And I always twist in the same direction because it gives continuity to the design and it doesn't confuse your eye then. Now, if you will notice, the size of this pot is in proportion to the frame, and the fig ivy is in proportion as well. You do not want to use too large of a container for your a small frame, or you don't want to use large leaf plants unless they're on a large frame. Otherwise, it's out of scale. And scale is very important when doing topiaries. I believe any plant can be trained. It's just how much time and patience you want to put into it and what you love about the plant you're trying to train. Excuse me.